Good morning, Internet land. Hi, everybody. We are live on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube right now, but as usual, we are waiting a moment to be live on Instagram too. And as soon as we are, we will get started. So just bear with us for a moment, but it is just really nice to be back here with everybody again to talk about this topic that is very dear to my heart because plot twists happen to all of us. Okay, we are live on Instagram. Yay. So good morning and welcome back to another episode of Learning with Two Life Coaches. I'm one of your hosts, Brian Hogan, and I'm here with my co-host, Morgan Barbrett. And today we are going to talk about how to deal with life's unexpected plot twists, which is very important because they happen to all of us. They can't be helped. It's why we love movies, because we like to go see these renditions of human life, because we go through what the characters go through who we love. We have plot twists and we have major turning points in our lives that are also plot twists. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what it looks like to be inside of a plot twist, and then what it looks like to handle them well or poorly. And then we're going to give you guys a strategy for how to handle the inside of your own plot twists, which you will definitely have.
Yeah.
So good morning.
Good morning. Yeah. So when we say plot twist, we basically just mean some form of unexpected life change, but we're partially using the term plot twist a little bit because Brian has worked in film, but also because it's kind of a relatable concept. Like if you're watching a movie and you're really into it and a plot twist happens, it's like, oh, like what I thought was going to happen is not happening. But obviously, it's a lot less fun when it happens in your own life.
Yeah.
But some examples of plot twists could be like having car trouble, getting a flat tire, or getting sick, having some form of health issues, maybe getting fired or laid off, or sometimes, well, actually this morning, Brian, like sometimes people in your life have conflict, and that's a plot twist. But
Yes.
anything that you're not anticipating can be a plot twist, and we can either handle it well, handle it poorly, but the more skills and tools we have to handle it, the better off our nervous systems are going to be, the happier we're going to be in the end.
Yeah, exactly. And the plot twists, they vary in degree, obviously, like the list that Mo was just giving. Like a plot twist can be something as simple as pulling away from the McDonald's drive-through and they put mayonnaise on your hamburger instead of ketchup, which is obviously universally disgusting and so would throw anybody into a tizzy, right?
You are wrong.
Okay, well, so depending on whether you like mayonnaise or not, it's a plot twist, an unexpected plot twist that you're going to have to deal with. And then, but they can also range to really important big things like the loss of a loved one, or like Mo said, the loss of a job, or something like really big and impactful. And so in our lives, they're riddled with plot twists, just like movies, right? But our lives are also filled with turning points. And a turning point is the same thing as a plot twist, except that after a turning point happens in your life, you're not the same anymore and you can't go back to the same way. Like your status quo kind of irreversibly changes when you go through a turning point. But the process of navigating a turning point or a plot twist is the same. What you do after you've navigated it and as you're dealing with the aftermath will be different. If you went through a big turning point, then there's going to be a lot that's required of you to grieve and process and fully heal. But if you went through a minor plot twist and you implement the steps that we're about to teach you, you can go through those plot twists more seamlessly, more in a more carefree way, and they can cause less long-term impact on you. Turning points are going to have long-term impact no matter what, but you can still suffer less on the way through them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as an example of a turning point, I feel like for most people, but definitely for myself and for most people that I've had conversations with about it, the pandemic was a turning point. There are a lot of things about ourselves and the way that we like experience our emotions and process situations that are fundamentally different now compared to 4, 5 years ago. So that's a big turning point. But usually, some of the bigger stuff we would consider to be a turning point. So when somebody you love passes away, when you get laid off, these are all things that are just fundamentally difficult to handle, but also there's such big parts of your life that it's impossible to walk away from it not having been changed in some
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, and exactly. And what makes plot twists and turning points, which are bigger plot twists, so difficult is the unexpected nature of them. They are not planned. We aren't ready. We're not ready, right? And so this is what it feels like inside of a plot twist. It can feel very overwhelming. It can feel very sort of disorienting. Like
Hmm.
any plot twist, because like if you think about movies that you love, sometimes the plot twist is negative, right? Like, oh, a major character dies, right? Sometimes the plot twist is positive, right? Like somebody wins the lottery or they get the girl or whatever it is, and it's unexpected. So even though it's good or bad, that doesn't change the fact that it was unexpected. And the fact that it was unexpected is what triggers the need to navigate through it. Anything that we expect to happen in our lives, we're already ready to navigate it. We're expecting it. That is what navigating it looks like. I'm expecting this, so I'm navigating towards this, and that navigation and
Hmm.
expectation are one and the same, right? We navigate as we expect. So when things come in that are unexpected, it throws our ability to navigate out the window, at least briefly, whether it's a good or a bad quote unquote change, whether it's a positive or a negative change. So
Yeah.
no matter what the plot twists are in your life, you want to be able to implement these steps and follow through with these steps so that the process that you're entering into, which is a change process, which means it's a grieving and loss process, you can go through it more seamlessly and more skillfully, and therefore reduce your suffering. Because even when something good happens, like you win the lottery, you've still lost something. What you've lost is your status quo. You've lost your old previous version of normal. And that feeling of loss and grief, and sometimes that can come with anxiety, is what needs to be processed through when life sends you or throws you a curveball, sends you a plot twist.
Yeah, I think that's something that people are really surprised by or caught off guard by is when good things happen unexpectedly. Sometimes you also experience negative emotions or overwhelm because it changes the way that you thought you were going to proceed forward. Um, so just know that if that ever happens, something good happens and you feel bad, it's not your fault. There's nothing wrong. It's just a side effect of going through change.
Exactly. It's natural. You're just having the natural response to all change, all
Yeah.
unexpected change. Change that you're expecting, you just go roll with it, right? But this
Yeah.
unexpected change is very difficult. So let's talk a little bit about some examples of how to handle plot twists well and how to handle them poorly. I'll start. So I
Okay.
have handled my fair share of plot twists poorly in my life. And some of these that I'm about to list are major ones. They were major turning points. Others were still just plot twists. But here's what. So I owned a medical marijuana dispensary, as you guys know, for about 7 years. And at one point, some people came in from the outside and tried to sort of hostile take over our company, and it was filled with gaslighting and all kinds of confusion. And in the end,
You
my
have the craziest stories, Brian.
yeah, my business partner and I decided, if we can't keep it, because we were too far into this process, we're like, if we can't keep it, you can't have it, because of the shady way it was happening. So we destroyed the thing. And so that was like a huge plot twist in my life. Another one
Uh-huh.
was, I lived on a non-governmental hospital ship that did relief and development work in third world countries earlier in my 20s. And I was a gay man, but it was a born again missionary ship. So I was very, like, LGBT Quantico about it with my secret undercover badge or whatever. And at one point, I got outed on the ship, and they sort of pushed me. They switched my job to something else, and then they put me through conversion therapy, which, in hindsight, it was
Plot
voluntary because
twist.
I agreed to it, right? But I was like, but it took me until 10 years or more later to realize what a big traumatic thing that was. But it was a huge unexpected plot twist. I was expecting to come back to the ship, do this other job, and then it was this and conversion therapy. And finally, I had a big falling out with a business partner over a production company. And it was that falling out that led me to end up starting the marijuana dispensary, which was hugely unexpected, right? The reason I'm telling you guys about these crazy turning points in my life is because I didn't know how to handle them, any of them. And I did not handle them well. It doesn't mean that I scorched the earth and destroyed my life, although with the hostile takeover, we kind of did do that. But that still felt like the right move. But the internal thing that was going on that caused so much suffering was that all of these events go down in my story, since I'm not handling the plot twist well, and they go down in my concept of self and my history as proof of my failure, proof of my unworthiness, or proof of my incompetence. That's how I would look at them. because I would see them as just like, oh, this is something bad happening to me, right? As
Mm,
opposed to being able to recognize, like, here's an unexpected plot twist, and I have tools, equipment, and
yeah.
steps to be able to deal with that plot twist. And so they went down in my life story as this type of thing, right? Which caused suffering for years with each one in different ways. So the way to handle plot twists, the opposite is just to not handle them, which is what I was doing. You just don't handle them. You just move on from them, and your mind inadvertently creates whatever negative meaning it's going to inadvertently create. If you don't deliberately create positive meaning, you can bet your ass your mind is going to inadvertently create negative meaning, because that's how our evolution works. Our brain
Mhm.
creates negative first to keep us alive. So we want to go in there and short circuit that by learning how to handle plot twists well, which
Yeah.
I have an example of that too, but I want to let you share some examples of from your side of
Well,
that.
before I share mine, yeah, obviously you said that handling it poorly is just not handling it at all.
At least that's
What
one.
does
Yeah.
what does not handling it at all look like? So somebody when they're going through their own plot twist, they can recognize it in themselves if they're not handling it.
That's a great question. What comes to mind immediately is that not handling it at all can feel like, see, if I'm looking back at my three examples, they all felt to me like I was handling them. But the way I
Yeah.
was handling them was through these means. And so if you're using these means to handle it, this means you're not handling it. One of those means is self-blame. If you get
Mm,
full on deep down into the self-blame territory,
yeah.
and this doesn't even mean that it might not be your fault. It might be, right? But being caught in self-blame isn't going to help you navigate the plot twist. Like, taking responsibility is beautiful, but taking responsibility is not the same as being stuck in self-blame, right?
Yeah, shaming yourself for whatever you did wrong, which you may not have done anything wrong, but yeah, like blaming yourself makes you feel so horrible and then is going to cause so many negative emotions later, and it doesn't actually help you navigate or figure out like what can I do about this? How can I move forward? How can I, you know,
Yeah.
come through it? Yeah, yeah. Okay. I'm glad I asked you that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another thing that it not handling it or handling it poorly looks like is slowly over time, your quality of existence changes. Like, I remember, if I'm really thinking about this now, that time on the ship when I ended up having to go into the conversion therapy, like, it didn't feel wrong immediately because I had self-loathing from my internalized homophobia. And so it felt like I was wrong to have hooked up with that dude on the ship, right? Like, that's what felt like was wrong. And then,
Mhm.
but slowly over time, I started to feel less connected to the ship, less at home
Yeah.
there, less part, right? And so if you're starting to feel those things too, like you get stuck in self-blame, or you're starting to really feel the essence changing around you, then that it might be a
Yeah.
sign to you that you're caught in a story that doesn't have all the hallmarks of truth about it, because truth
Yeah.
liberates and lies cause suffering.
Yeah, I think that happens to a lot of people who are in, toxic relationships or friendships. Like, you start to feel less comfortable around this person. You start to feel like icky, like when you're spending time with them, or you feel really bad about yourself anytime that you're around them. And so all these like negative emotions start coming in. And so what you described about feeling less at home with something that your mind is telling you, this is home, this is my person, this is my best friend, this is whatever, but you feel awful when you're there, that's your body telling you it's a lie.
Yeah, which is an example of you, no fault or blame here, but that's an
Yeah.
example of you not handling something. It's the thing,
Mhm.
because it's, if you're, whatever it is you're not handling is amplifying that feeling, right? So that feeling of not feeling at home will continue to grow bigger and bigger and bigger because you're not
Mhm.
handling something. And I don't mean not handling it in a blamey, judgmental way. We all
Mhm.
go through life all the time not handling a lot of things. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
it's the status quo, so it's okay. But not handling things leads to suffering. So this isn't about like, you should handle stuff better. It's like, don't you want to feel better? And feeling better is about handling stuff better. So they go hand in hand.
Yeah. I do wanna offer a caveat, which is that, some people do deal with a lot of anxiety, and sometimes you will feel negative emotions around people who are safe and who are right, especially if you have, like, because I've worked with clients who have relationship anxiety, and sometimes they have, like a lot of anxiety around their partners precisely because they are healthy for them. So in certain
Mhm.
cases, your emotions and your body is going to kind of be miscalibrated. But if you don't have that, like if you know that you don't like personally struggle with relationship anxiety or some variation of that, then you can trust that your body's leading you the right way when you start to feel not at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right on. And if you do start to feel not at home and you're not sure if you can trust it, that's when you can implement the steps that we're going to go over with you, because they will
Yeah.
slow you down and they'll bring you a little bit more clarity. So you're never totally out to sea. And obviously, in the worst case scenario, you seek the advice of a friend or a counselor or a coach, because you are not alone on this planet with these magical technologies, the one that we're beaming this message to you through, and the ones that we hold in our hands.
The
Like,
internet.
you're not alone. You know what I mean? There is a way to get the support
Yeah.
that you need. So even if you feel
Right,
like
right.
you can't rely on your body compass, then you
Yeah.
can, there is someone you can rely on. So just to
Yeah.
know that.
Okay,
Uh,
Brian, we've made them wait long enough. So let's talk about what are the steps to handle it positively, successfully, navigate well, etc.
okay. Well, those steps go along with my how me handling it well story. So I
Okay.
had a flight that came home from coming home from Cleveland a few weeks ago, and it got canceled. And something in me knew that it was going to be canceled. Like, I had just come home from a month-long yoga retreat. So I was feeling like really
Mhm.
high on this yoga energy, like really tuned in and connected, right? And all week long we'd been having this, it was supposed to be like a conference, right? But I said it was an adventure because I told them things started going wrong on the first day. And I said to them, the only difference between an adventure and a vacation is that on an adventure, shit goes wrong, which is something I heard from Martha Beck, right? And I was like, so we're on an adventure. And they were like, no, 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 please. We want to be on a vacation. Let it go back to being a vacation. And I was like, I'm not making it an adventure. It just is an adventure.
It is an
Because
adventure.
shit's going wrong. Sorry, guys. That's what makes it an adventure. And so all week long, I had this like, it is what it is. You do you mantra about things, and just
Yeah,
trying.
yeah.
So this is about surrender and detachment, which are the steps, right? And by the end of the weekend, we get to the airport, and I'm still feeling this tuned in feeling. And the two women I'm with have mostly come around to, slightly reluctantly, but one reluctantly, one not so reluctantly. They've come around to like, it is what it is. We're on
It's
an
an
adventure.
adventure.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
an adventure, right? And so like then the flight kept getting delayed, and it was delayed and delayed. And finally I looked over, I was like, should we just get a rental car just in case the flight gets canceled, so at least that we have like a way back, because all the hotels were booked for 3 days, and like the next flight out wasn't until Tuesday. So it was like we knew if the flight got canceled, we'd be stuck there for 3 days. So we knew that already. So I was like, should we rent a car? And then she was like, no, no, I don't, it's not gonna. And I was like, well, okay, yeah, but should we just have it just in case, so that if the flight gets canceled, all the carpool, like all the people are gonna try to book. And she's like, can you find one that's like refundable? And I was like, okay, I'll look, sure. She's like, yeah, if you can find a refundable one, let's do it. Let's do it. So I was like, okay, cool. So I booked the flight. Uh, an hour later, the flight got canceled.
Oh, you
Pandemonium,
booked the
the rental car.
the
Yeah,
car? Yes. Okay.
rental car. Yeah. An hour later, the flight gets canceled. Pandemonium everywhere. And the one of the women who I'm with looks over to me, and she was the one that had been struggling the most all week with all of the different setbacks, like pretty legit setbacks. And she turns to
Yeah,
me and
yeah.
she goes, ah, it is what it is. And I was like, yes, exactly. Let's go. So
Oh
we
my
went, we
gosh.
got our rental car. We drove an 8-hour drive home that we weren't planning on, like through the middle of the night. But that was handling the setback well, or the unexpected plot twist well in that case. And so within that story, these are the steps that were evident there, which is so this is what you guys can try to put into practice to also handle your plot twists well. Step one, there are 6. Okay. Step one is to slow down or stop fully. So, like, when a plot twist happens, the last thing that you want to do is like rush into trying to fix it mode. If you're in a crisis and an emergency, that's different. We're not
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
about an emergency. So, stop or slow down, and then immediately bring on whatever patience you can muster. That's step one. And then step
yeah.
two is to deal with it head on. So that's the opposite of what I was doing with those first 3, those big turning points that I told you about. I just kind of like didn't deal with them, went forward in my life, like decided inadvertently what they mean about me: failure, incompetent, unworthy, and then just kept going on in my life. That's not dealing with them, but they caused suffering, right? So you want to surrender to what is. This is step 3. You face what's happening, you surrender to what is, and you detach from your preconceived notion of what was, or what it should have been,
Yeah.
or what it should be. this takes time. Step 3, the whole
It's
thing
hard.
takes time. Yeah, step 3 is hard. And I'm going to talk at the end a little bit about how to try to make this a common practice, because what you do in regular life is what you do as a default when crises do happen, right? So these steps are great for handling the inside of a plot twist, but they're great for just handling your daily life too. And so if you practice them as a way to handle your daily life, these are what you will default to in a plot twist, which is what you want. So surrender to what is, detach from the previous idea, and then see what needs to be done. Step 3A is what I'm calling it, is grieve fully and often as you deal with the plot twist. So this is what it means, like by like deal head on. Whatever the emotions are that come up, whatever the things are that come up, the doubts, deal with them, go to them, show up for them with self-kindness, all the things that we've always been talking about, right?
Yeah.
And
Feel
then
it.
feel it, feel it, feel it, and let your emotions be your teacher. But step
Quick
4,
pause
yeah,
before step 4. A lot of times we're afraid to feel it because we're worried it'll take us out, but the truth is usually the opposite. If you're able to feel some of that emotion that's coming up, that energy is going to be bottled up inside of you regardless of whether you feel it or not. And when
yeah,
you do feel it, it's like you're like opening like a pressure release. It lets some of it out and then it helps you think more clearly, it helps you relax, it helps you be better able to handle it with a clear head. So if you have time to pause and like have a quick cry, it quite literally will allow you to then come back to it from a place that is more stable.
yes. I mean, it literally will balance your hormones. It'll set your neurotransmitters right. It
Mhm.
literally is very helpful, especially crying in particular, but any sort
Yeah,
of like owning up to what you're feeling and allowing
yeah.
yourself to feel it, because that's you telling yourself the truth. And as the good book says, the truth will set you free, right? So that you will feel that liberated feeling because you're captive to the emotions you're denying,
Yeah,
but you're
yeah.
free from the emotions you express. And so
Yes.
that's the thing. And step 4 is along these lines. It's take breaks, right? So no denial doesn't mean no rest. The first step was slow down or stop fully, if you
Oh,
remember.
yeah.
When you go through this process of dealing with it head on, grieving the loss, dealing with it head on, grieving the loss, stop and take breaks because you need to rest too. So you'll know when you need to take breaks because you're going to want to fall asleep, probably, right?
Yeah.
Like you're really going through this process. So slow means fast when you're healing and dealing. When you're healing from stuff and dealing with stuff, slow means fast. So grieve fully, but then take
Mhm.
breaks. When you don't feel like doing anything and you've just been through a plot twist or a turning point, then don't do anything. That's literally a step here. Step 4 is
Yeah.
to not even do a step. So, and then step 5 is keep going back to relentless grace and self kindness. I'm calling this step 5, but it's really more of like, think of this as the container for all the steps. All of the
Yeah.
steps that you're going to do them with relentless grace and self kindness. And the way that you can help bring that back to yourselves is this question that we've talked about before. How would you treat a scared child, a wounded animal, or a best friend who is going through what you're going through? And then that's how you treat yourself as
Yeah.
much as you can. And then the last step is to hold all plans and progress lightly. Because when you've gone through a plot twist, the proclivity of the negativity brain, which just wants to keep us safe, is going to be to try to make plans and put it all back together or build it up into something new with masking tape and glue and whatever it can figure out. But that's not
Yeah.
necessarily the right move, right? And it might be, but it might not be. And so you hold
Well,
all your plans and progress lightly. You take
yeah.
steps, you hold it lightly. If it works, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And you keep going back, right? The last thing you want to do is get deeply married to the progress you're making after a plot twist, because being deeply married to the progress you were making before the plot twist is likely why you're suffering now, right? So you keep making your plans, hold your progress lightly while you make progress.
Yeah. No, I you covered what I was gonna say, but yeah, so when your first instinct when something falls apart, a lot of us is going to be, "Let's put it back together." And the downside of that is you put in all this effort to put it back together, but you're still in a space of uncertainty where those plans that you just made are probably not going or they're not likely to work out exactly how you expect. So you're potentially creating more suffering for yourself by trying to replan or reconstruct rather than just step 3, which is surrender to what it is.
Exactly. Step three. Yeah. Step three is the hardest step. And I'm glad that you just brought up step three again, because step three is the reason why it's the most powerful piece, but it's also the reason why I want to reiterate for people, like, practice these steps anytime you can in your life as you're dealing with anything at all in your life, because the ability to go slow, to deal with things head on, to surrender to what is, and to drop your preconceived notions is the recipe for a joyful life. It's
Yeah.
also a recipe for dealing with your plot twists, but it won't be the most easily accessible thing for you to bring to your plot twists if it isn't easily accessible for you to bring it to your regular life.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanna, try to make this even clearer. Like, if you were to imagine 2 different people, both people are having plenty of plot twists in their lives, both people are having things not go as planned, and you have one person who's trying to force the original plan to continue, and one person who says, "Oh, that happened. Okay, I'm gonna pause, I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna be like, okay, it is what it is now. What can I do now?" Like, which of these people is going to be happier?
Yeah,
Which of
exactly.
these people is going to be, like, more or less stressed? It's like the answer is obvious, and I think that really this thing that we're talking about, this surrendering and, like, letting go when something doesn't go as planned, is one of, like, the biggest keys to a joyful life. Because if you're if you're not able to surrender, then you're going to be the kind of person who's always like, "Oh, bad things are always happening to me. It's the fault of the universe. I have bad luck. Everybody's got things against me." And that's not the kind of energy that you wanna be in.
Yeah, because it's disempowering. It's false.
Yeah.
There's always stuff we can do, and so it's because it's false. It's disempowering. It takes away your agency and your ability to grow, create, change, make. Yeah. So learning to roll with it, everybody. I mean, this what we're talking about here, what we're calling step three, is like everything that piles of yogic sutra books talk about. They spend thousands upon thousands of pages talking about surrender and detachment, right? So like
Yeah.
it's a practice, right? Like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best
Yeah.
time now, right? So if you're hearing this and you're like, I don't know how to surrender and detach, that's okay. Just plant a seed today, right? Like surrender or detach from the smallest little thing in your life that you already don't care that much about as practice, because that's what I mean. You just practice it.
Yeah.
And then eventually you can surrender things you do care about and then things you desperately care about.
Yeah. I'm so glad that we're talking about this today because, as you know, Brian, I'm getting married in about a week, and then I'm going on my honeymoon. And that
Woohoo!
concept of, like, the only difference between a vacation and an adventure is that on an adventure, things go wrong. Like, things will go wrong. Most things are an adventure. But if I'm attached to things not going wrong when I go on this honeymoon, I could make it, bad in my mind, but if I'm ready for it to be an adventure, then I can enjoy the whole thing even as
Mm.
many things go wrong. Hopefully, minimal things, but it's guaranteed that not everything's gonna go the way that we plan. So,
Yeah.
I'm ready for that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Exactly. We want to court adventure in our lives. Like, let's
Yeah,
court adventure. It's an adventure anyway. And so, what
yeah,
makes it a pleasant adventure is non resistance. Otherwise, it can just be a stressful adventure. But it's going to
yeah,
be an adventure one way or the other, right? So,
yeah,
and the other thing that
yeah,
I'll end with this because I know we're past our time now, but you mentioned, like, when things go wrong, it's want to be okay when things are wrong. The truth is too, like in my life anyway, a lot of the times the things that went wrong in the present, I look back on later and I'm like, oh, thank goodness for that twist
yeah,
of fate, right? That plot twist of fate. And so just noticing that too in your own lives, right? Like we can feel the wrongness of it in the present moment, but from the perspective of the future, looking at it as the past, it oftentimes doesn't feel so wrong anymore. Not always, but a lot of times, right? So just noticing that when you're in your adventure, like sometimes the setbacks are actually setups for you, and
yeah,
you can sort of, oh, am I in the middle of a setup even though it feels awful? Maybe. All right, let me keep surrendering.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Love
Okay.
it. Thank you,
Thank
Brian.
you, everybody. Yeah. Thank you, Mo. And thank you, everybody. And if you have any questions about surrender or detachment or what to do about plot twists, put them in the comments. Mo and I are on this, so we will see these and we will answer you throughout the days, weeks, and ages to come. All right. Much
Yeah.
love, everybody. Not sure if we're having an episode next week. I will keep you posted. So just stay tuned to your social media profiles and you will either have an announcement for us next week. And if you don't see an announcement, then we'll be back in 2 weeks. But either way, we will see you soon. Much love, everybody.